What's up, guys? It's your boy Makoto White, and today I'm about to react to this video. It's called Great People Who Weren't Great People. Yeah, that sounds crazy, man, but do not forget to like, comment, subscribe, and let's get it, man.
Greatness is a virtue that many of us aspire to achieve, whether that be through the skills we develop or the impact we have on others. We all have something in our lives that we wish to be great at. But there's a level of greatness that some of us achieve that goes far beyond what we expect from most people, where they make such a significant contribution to the world that we as a society have decided that these are the figures who are great enough to be taught in school, great enough to be quoted, and great enough to be revered in our collective conscience.
I mean, I'm not really surprised that half of these great people aren't great people. That's a lot of people, actually, if we're being honest. Like, a lot of people are horrible people and dark. So it's like, wolf in sheep clothing, that's, you already know how that goes.
But in the process of venerating those who did great things, we often fail to learn the full picture of who they are as people, only learning the good, but not the bad or ugly side of them, allowing us to succumb to the halo effect. The error we make when a person's achievement allows us to be blind to everything else about them. Now, to clarify, my intention is not to discredit their actual achievements, nor am I interested in canceling anyone. I'm also not going to mention things people did that were unsurprising for their time, because applying today's
Nah, you gotta mention it all, man. You gotta expose the truth, man. The good, the bad, and the ugly, man.
Expectations on the people of yesterday makes absolutely no sense. Most people in human history were probably racist or sexist or homophobic, or whatever else you can think of. So I'm not really interested in virtue signaling about how someone 100 years ago said something problematic. However, if what they did contradicts what made them great to begin with, that's fair game. And so, I present to you great people who weren't great people. We'll start with pissing off an entire nation of fake accents by talking about Sir Winston Leonard Spencer Churchill, or just Churchill, better known as that guy who defeated Hitler. To this day, the British consistently regard him as one of the greatest Britons to have ever lived. And if all you know about Churchill are his achievements as the UK's leader against the Nazis, you'd probably
Yeah, I ain't never heard of this guy until today, man.
feel the same way. But here's the hard truth.
I probably have heard that name. I just don't really be paying attention like that when it comes to history.
If it wasn't for World War II, Churchill would have been remembered for much worse. And that's being generous, since he likely wouldn't be remembered at all. Despite being one of history's most staunch opponents of the Nazi regime and its hateful ideology, he had surprisingly similar views that a racial hierarchy existed, believing that white Protestants were at the top, followed by white Catholics, then Indians, and then Africans. Apparently the other races didn't matter enough. Again, I'm not interested in bringing up all his comments if those ideas were mainstream. But even during that time, his views on racial supremacy to justify British imperialism were considered to be fringe and extreme. As late as 1955, 10 years after defeating the Nazis, he reportedly suggested the phrase, "Keep England white," as a good slogan to use against immigration.
Yo, that's crazy. This man acting crazy.
But perhaps the worst stain on Churchill's legacy is his action, or rather, lack of action, during the Bengal famine of 1943. While British officials begged for food supplies to be directed for India, Churchill and his cabinet
Yeah, that's like Trump being like, make America white again. Like, that's crazy, man. That's crazy.
ordered 170,000 tons of wheat from Australia to be transported to Europe in order to build a stockpile for European civilians. Let me say that again. He ordered food to pass by millions of starving people, who were his British subjects at the time, in order to be used for storage in Europe. But this isn't terribly surprising, given that he once said, "I hate Indians. They are a beastly people with a beastly religion," as well as blaming the famine severity on his view that Indians breed like rabbits. By the time he finally approved for food to be sent, up to 3 million people were already dead.
Dang.
Firstly, the man hated Gandhi with a passion, since he represented a largely peaceful movement advocating for Indian independence. Consistent with earlier points about his belief
Yo, this dude hate Indians.
that certain races
What is that all about?
were inferior to others and his general disdain for India, Churchill was completely against any form of self-determination for Britain's colonies, and actively
Bro, I'm not trying to be mean, but this Churchill guy sounds insecure as F.
wished for Gandhi and his movement to die in failure.
He sound evil, and he sound like a horrible person.
Now that I've pissed off the English and made goodwill with the Indians, it's time to burn the bridge with my fellow Indians and talk about Gandhi. This man has been rightfully celebrated by India for helping to bring about the country's independence from the United Kingdom, and he's admired internationally for his use of non-violent activism. But despite his lifelong battle against the oppression of Indians by the British Empire, he didn't seem to mind knowing that the same empire was also oppressing Africans, referring to them as savages, half-heathen natives, uncivilized, and dirty like animals. How someone can have those beliefs about a group of people, but also insist that those beliefs don't apply to his own group is baffling to say the least. It would be a bit like him saying, "Hey Britain, you need to stop viewing Indians as dirty, uncivilized people and give us independence." Oh wait, you meant the Africans? Yeah, I totally agree with you then. Gandhi also had some disturbing ideas about sex. He would conduct so-called tests on his celibacy in order to determine his self-control. To him, lust was an enemy that needed to be destroyed, and he somehow concluded that the best way to defeat it was to sleep with naked teenagers.
Wow. That's crazy work. I didn't know he did all this now.
Who were more than
Dang, that's sick, bro. What's going on, man? Why are we still celebrating this dude?
half a century younger than him. Despite
Man being a pedophile, being a creep, acting desperate, thirsty.
all these shortfalls of Gandhi, he helped to inspire younger generations throughout his lifetime,
That should have been like the first thing we would have known him about.
convincing leaders around the world to use nonviolent means to advocate for their causes, with one of them being our next great
Man, I'm disappointed, bruh.
person, Martin Luther King Jr. Revered for his powerful and inspiring speeches protesting the injustices black people faced in America, MLK is rightfully at the top of many lists when it comes to history's greatest people. But if there's one thing confirming that he's still just a human, it was women. Throughout his life as a civil rights leader, women in the movement have been consistently put on the sidelines. Figures such as Ella Baker and Dorothy Height describe their personal experiences of often being made subordinate to male leaders like MLK, despite the fact that they were the same skin color, fighting for the same cause. I guess when he gave his famous "I have a dream" speech and declared that all men are created equal, he really only meant that all men are created equal. And he wasn't much better with women in his personal relationships either, having been a serial cheater to his wife up until
Yeah, I heard about that, bro. That's crazy work, man.
his assassination. In fact, as a deeply religious figure, MLK himself recognized the sinfulness of his infidelity and reportedly felt unworthy of the many accolades people place upon him, not wanting to be treated as a saint. But someone who did want to be a saint and ended up becoming one is none other than Saint Teresa of Calcutta. With a name synonymous with selflessness, Mother Teresa continues to be admired around the world as a humanitarian icon, even receiving the Nobel Peace Prize in 1979. The best way to comprehend her impact on the world is by understanding that her primary objective wasn't really to reduce suffering, heal the sick, or even help the poor. Rather, it was to bring as many people to the Catholic Church as possible. Oftentimes, this objective happened to overlap with plenty of good things she did, like building schools and orphanages, feeding people, and taking in those with illnesses. But there were also plenty of moments when her objective didn't do much good, and may have even done more harm to those she was supposedly helping. Many of the facilities Mother Teresa ran were observed as having extremely unhygienic conditions and a lack of actual medical staff, food, and painkillers. A former volunteer revealed that dying patients were simply given aspirin rather than proper medication, and recalled how needles continue to be reused without being sterilized.
Wow. Finna get somebody some hepatitis or something, bruh. What the heck? That's how you know she didn't care about these people for real.
Which would be horrible today, but was even more horrible during the height of the AIDS epidemic. It gets even worse after you learn that Mother Teresa's organization would receive tens of millions of dollars every year, most of which is now believed to be held by the Vatican. Teresa's actions were based on her fundamentalist Catholic beliefs, like her view that poor people suffering in this world was actually a good thing. One saying,
Wait, she said that? That's crazy. Wow.
there is
That is really crazy.
something beautiful in seeing the poor accept their lot, to suffer it like Christ's passion. The world gains much from their suffering. It is from this framework of glorifying human pain where we can begin to understand why none of the hundreds of millions of dollars Mother Teresa received over the years went to bringing in doctors to actually help the sick, or why water heaters for washing and cleaning were refused, or why proper medication wasn't purchased. Additionally, a reporter who visited these facilities observed how volunteers would laugh about a boy who urinated while being tied to a bed and saw an older woman tied to a tree. In another orphanage,
Bro, what is going on?
volunteers would tie up disabled children without batting an eyelid. There was clearly a general roughness toward people in Mother Teresa's care. So despite being declared a saint by Pope Francis in 2015, to many of her critics, she was certainly anything but. What's the opposite of an old woman who's deeply religious, quiet, and conservative? A young man who's anti-religious, violent, and communist. Yet both are in the same category of those who are venerated by millions around the world while not actually being great people. I am, of course, talking about Mr. Ernesto Che Guevara, the ubiquitous symbol for counterculture and rebellion. He tortured and executed hundreds of people and established Cuba's first military units to aid production, or concentration camps for short. Tens of thousands of intellectuals, gay people, priests, conscientious objectors, and really anyone who is considered antisocial such as hippies were targeted. Which is especially ironic considering that the very people who
Yeah, that's not right.
celebrate him today would be the exact types
How is a hippie antisocial? Aren't hippies supposed to be peaceful? Antisocial means like someone who's a sociopath or like a psychopath. You know, like someone that's causing trouble, that's like killing someone, hurting somebody, acting emotional, like acting crazy, acting off the hinges. You know, it doesn't make sense to me.
of people thrown into these forced labor camps or just straight up executed. Despite having the supposed morally superior ideology, Che referred to gay people as sexual perverts, Mexicans as
I mean, he is right about that. Unfortunately, he's right about that.
a band of illiterate Indians, and black people as those magnificent examples of the African race who have maintained their racial purity thanks to their lack of affinity with bathing. Quite the progressive icon. What's probably the most ironic thing about Che the anti-capitalist that would have him rolling in his grave would be the fact that his iconic photograph has been making filthy capitalists filthy rich from the very moment he died, selling millions of posters, hats, flags, hoodies, backpacks, mouse pads, shirts, you name it, being commercialized and exploited more than possibly any other figure in human history. Today, his rockstar image to most people makes him less Lenin and more Lenin, which, speaking of the devil,
Dang, why you got this junk looking dark?
considered one of the greatest musicians of all time, there is no doubt that John Lennon, along with the rest of the Beatles, not you, Ringo, forever changed the world of music.
Yeah.
So it's quite understandable why millions of boomers, and frankly, even younger generations adore John Lennon for having created so many songs that continue to be popular to this day. Throughout his life, he was also famous for
I don't know. I still can't take the Beatles seriously after they said they were bigger than God. That was funny. I mean, not funny, but it was just crazy work that they said that.
his commitment to love and peace, and became a symbol for it too. But it's a shame he didn't practice what he preached, given that he publicly confessed to having beaten women, cheated on his wife, treated their child like absolute garbage, and then left his family to be with Yoko Ono so they could make whatever the hell this is.
Well, I sound like he said the N-word. And who is Yoko Ono? I don't know who these people are. I mean, I don't know who that is.
Perhaps this is why he found it easy to imagine there was no heaven. He probably didn't expect to enter it anyways. But he's far from the only great person to have treated his significant other like crap. Take JFK, for instance, a president beloved by Americans from both the left and right, something that is impossible for any of our politicians today. And sure, part of it is the simple fact that JFK was young, attractive,
Yo, why did he get killed for? I'm so confused on that. Even till this day.
and assassinated. Comparing that to the two candidates we currently have, where both of them are not
Because I don't care about politics. I'm not everybody else, bro. I'm not an NPC, man.
young, not attractive, and not assassinated. But an even bigger reason is that we now live in a world where every issue, person, and news story is polarized to such an extent that people will have completely different facts on a subject based on where they get their sources from. Take, for instance, the story about Robert Kennedy Jr.'s Super Bowl ad for his presidential campaign that was very similar to an ad from his uncle, JFK, back when he was running for president. With Ground News, today's sponsor, I can see how there's a blind spot on the right for this story, with only 16 out of 119 sources coming from that side, possibly due to RFK's better approval among Republicans. I'm also able to read through summaries that Ground News creates which highlight differences in what the right and left say about every news story, like how the left is emphasizing the pain Kennedy caused with the ad, while the right is focusing on the sincerest apologies that he gave to his family. So I'm proud to partner again with Ground News, an amazing website and app I use to help me research for videos like the one you're watching, as well as help me understand important issues like the Russia-Ukraine and Israel-Palestine conflicts and the upcoming presidential election. None of us have the time to go through and read every single source on both sides of the political spectrum, so it's incredible that Ground News can do all that work for us so we can stay informed and understand what each side is saying about any issue. If you're interested in understanding all the biases that come with every news story you read about, be sure to go to my link at ground.news/bofang so you can save 40% off their unlimited Vantage subscription, the very one I'm using right now. Back to JFK, the president we all know and love who was killed by... insert your favorite theory here. But he's also the president who is too busy cheating on his pregnant wife while partying in Europe to bother
Wow, that's messed up.
coming back home as she gave birth to their child, who ended up being stillborn. Guess who wasn't much
What does that mean? Like they can't move or something?
better? Dr. Seuss, the man we all know and love for creating classic children's
Dang, I didn't know this dude had dirt on him.
books like The Cat in the Hat, Green Eggs and Ham. Ooh, okay, not that one. Wait, not that one either. What the
Wow.
fuck? How the Grinch Stole Christmas, The Lorax, and so many other stories. But even he, the man whose books touched the childhoods of every generation going all the way back to the boomers, reportedly had an affair, drove his wife of 40 years to suicide, and then married the new woman just 8 months later. Steve
Man, that's crazy, bruh.
Jobs, or
Man, people acting weird out here. And demonic and evil.
as I called him in my previous video,
You don't be...
Steve Apple is considered to be one of the greatest figures in the world of technology, putting aside the fact that he was more of the marketer rather than the creator for these Apple products we know and love. Regardless, in many aspects of his life, he was just a straight up bad father, partner, friend, boss, and well, person. From the beginning of his career, Steve Jobs tricked his fellow Apple co-founder Steve Wozniak into working day and night on a project for Atari by imposing an unnecessarily stressful deadline. They agreed to split the payout 50-50, but when Atari paid Jobs $5,000, he claimed they only received $700, and so gave his friend $350, who later cried when he found out about it. He also refused to provide his most loyal employees with stock options, which prompted the better Steve to try to do the right thing by giving the money out of his own personal share. Outside of being a terrible boss at Apple, Steve Jobs refused to pay a single dollar in child support for his daughter and forced his partner to clean houses and
Dang, that's crazy, bro. Deadbeat dad's crazy work.
live on welfare in order to raise their child. This is all while he was a multi-millionaire, and it wasn't until he was legally forced to provide payment when he finally gave in. On top of all that, he continued to publicly deny that the child was his, even after paternity tests
Yeah, this dude look crazy in the photo.
proved that
He's like a psychopath.
You are the father.
And one more thing that might seem insignificant to some people, but what I think says a lot about his character. He would regularly park in handicap spots and drove without a license plate because he just didn't like how it made the car look.
Wait, how did he not get arrested?
Yeah, just pure narcissism at its finest. So at this point, it seems clear that being smart doesn't prevent people from making stupid decisions. Even Albert Einstein, whose name is now synonymous with genius, had serious
Okay, what he doing?
flaws as
Everybody's catching me off guard with acting like a evil person.
a person. The physics prodigy was able to figure out four-dimensional spacetime, relativity of simultaneity, kinematic and gravitational time dilation, length contraction, and most famously, mass-energy equivalence, but somehow couldn't figure out how to treat his wife and children like human beings. For one, there's no record of Einstein having ever bothered to meet his first child, and scholars believe that he and his wife gave her up to an orphanage. After having 2 more children with the same wife and deciding to keep them this time, he suddenly decided to start cheating on her with his own cousin. And you might assume that it was
Dang.
surely a third cousin twice removed or something. But nope, they were first cousins. Their moms were sisters. As if that wasn't bad enough, after his wife found out about the affair, she felt it was still better that Einstein stay with her for their 2 children. But he forced her to accept the following conditions. My clothes are kept in good order. I am served 3 meals a day in my room. We will have no personal relations or affection, unless we're out in public to keep up social appearances. And you must leave my bedroom or study immediately when I ask you to. In other words, he told her, clean and organize my clothes, make me breakfast, lunch, and dinner, do not touch me, and shut up and leave whenever I feel like it. To add insult to injury, he would describe his wife as an unfriendly, humorless creature, writing, I treat my wife as an employee whom I cannot fire. She ended up having a nervous breakdown after he decided to still leave her and their 2 children and marry his first cousin. Now one might have
Wow.
hope that at the very least, he found his true love in his cousin and remained faithful to her
Or why he acting desperate and weird?
happily ever after. But nah.
Cousin is crazy work.
If anything, he had even more affairs with women during his second marriage than his first. So it seems that if you're smart enough, whitewashed enough, respected enough, talented enough, or die early enough, you can get away from the scrutiny of society and maintain a fairly positive legacy. Look, I'm not saying that we need to invalidate people's meaningful achievements just because they also did awful things. And I'm certainly not telling you to buy an Android or listen to the Beach Boys or be racist. Being a great person and being a great person are two very different things. But what's unfortunate about this world is that too often, we only seem to admire one of them when we should be celebrating both. Yes, we ought to be thankful for all the wonderful things these people did for us. But we should be just as grateful for the great people in our lives that make life truly great.
Alright, man, that seems to be the end of the video. Do not forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I'm out.